Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with How I Discovered Prokofiev as a kid. And, Prokofiev is a wonderful composer to discover as a kid because he wrote music for kids. I mean, not all composers have the courtesy to do that for us young'uns, but Prokofiev did. And the work in question is, of course, ta-da, Peter and the Wolf. What a brilliant masterpiece that is. Nobody really gives it any credit anymore for being just a work of genius, but it's a fantastic little story, and it's full of what makes Prokofiev Prokofiev. And what makes Prokofiev Prokofiev more than anything else is that distinctive melodic quality he had, that wrong note romanticism, the ability to write melodies with just a little quirk, in their themes that tells you instantly who the composer is. That's a gift. That's not something that can be taught. It's not something people acquire. It just is. I mean, the iconic example, in my view anyway, isn't just the tune for Peter, but it's the melody for the cat in the clarinet. Do 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 do. You know that one. It's instantly identifiable as Prokofiev. It's just based on like simple chords, triads, rising and falling. He could do that. And you know who it is. It's just amazing. It's like that thing they use in the commercial all the time now. The Knight's Dance from Romeo and Juliet. It's nothing but going up and down on a minor key triad. That's all it is. But it's Prokofiev. It's amazing. So anyway, Peter and the Wolf, I had one of those children's records, that had all kinds of things on it, like Tubby the Tuba and all that stuff. And one of the things on it was Peter and the Wolf. And so I knew Peter and the Wolf. I didn't know Prokofiev. That came a little bit later. But I have a love affair with Peter and the Wolf because later on in my career as a percussionist, I got to be the hunters in performances of Peter and the Wolf at the 92nd Street Y. Every year here in Manhattan, every year they had a children's, concert. And people would bring their kids, and of course the adults would be entranced and the children would be bored because, as everyone knows, young people's concerts and children's concerts are really for parents, seldom for kids. But after the concert, it was my moment of glory because the kids could come up on stage and they could talk to the various players and get to see all the instruments. And poor old Grandpa, who, was the bassoon, no one cared about the bassoon. The violins, well, they were Peter. Never mind. They were Peter. And, you can't, they're a clump, they weren't that interesting because Peter is a clump. Of course, the wolves, the wolf got some attention. The wolf was the French horns with a nice cymbal roll behind it. Now, some of you might have known that, not because you saw Peter and the Wolf, but because it was used as the music backing the coyote quite often in Roadrunner cartoons. Also, it appeared there. So if you were a cartoon person, as I was, you knew the wolf before you got to the wolf, because the wolf was the coyote. And then there was, of course, the hunters, who were the timpani, and that was me. Oh my God, that was fun, because everyone wanted to meet the hunters and play the timpani. So that was like, I fell in love with Prokofiev right there, because he did so much for my own personal popularity with the kids. After Prokofiev and Peter and the Wolf, after Peter and the Wolf, you deal with Prokofiev as a major composer. So it was years after learning Peter and the Wolf, and I was like 6 or 7, who knows, that I actually listened to anything else by Prokofiev. The next thing I actually heard by Prokofiev was the Fifth Symphony. And I I'm not sure why it was the Fifth Symphony. It was Andre Previn's LSO recording of Prokofiev's Fifth, which is absolutely terrific. I probably read a review somewhere because as soon as I learned how to read, I read record reviews. I read record reviews in the arts and leisure section of the New York Times. And that recording got a very good review somewhere, somehow. So I got it. And, it blew me away. It was so powerful with the crashing tam-tam and the coda of the first movement. Then I realized that most recordings don't even allow you to hear the crashing tam-tam and the coda of the first movement. That was another thing that really got me into not only playing percussion, of course, but being a critic, comparing performances. I would say to myself, gee whiz, where's the crashing tam-tam and the coda of the first movement when I heard all these other performances of it where you didn't hear it? What's the matter with these conductors? Why don't they let you hear something that's supposed to be the loudest, bloody thing in the orchestra? I could never figure it out. And gradually then, my Prokofiev experience began to expand. After the Fifth Symphony came the Third Piano Concerto, which I, of course, adored. I adored because of that wrong note romanticism in the second movement. The march, da 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 da, yeah, 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 yeah. It's a theme in variations. It's totally marvelous, absolutely marvelous. Of course, there was the Suite from the Love for Three Oranges with the march, da da dum bum 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 ba ba da. Another one of those great Prokofiev melodies. Yeah, they're kind of amazing. I mean, he doesn't get a lot of credit anymore. We don't hear about him so much as the genius melodist that he was. But my God, the tunes just came pouring out at least in his major works. And I think it's kind of interesting, actually, that today we tend to emphasize the gnarlier side of Prokofiev, the wartime piano sonatas, which I didn't hear until I was like in my 20s, so much later, because, I didn't play the piano at all well. I played the piano, but horribly, and, never got to anything that was virtuoso material. And they are tough works, and he wrote tough music, and we tend to admire him more for the difficult stuff than for the easy stuff. But, my God, is there any greater ballet than Romeo and Juliet? Really? Seriously? And it's all because of that unbelievable gift of melody that he had. But then again, I've said this many times, and I know we've talked about it. Melody is not quantifiable. It's not categorizable. You can't explain why one tune is great and another one isn't. You really can't. And musicologists can't deal with melody at all, in anything other than technical harmonic terms. And Prokofiev is not a composer who operates by that kind of analysis. He really isn't. I think it's really fascinating also how Prokofiev's reputation kind of took a dive in tandem with the rise of Shostakovich. Because Shostakovich is the greater of the two because he's more tragic. Remember, Prokofiev was in the West. He was in France. He went back to Russia. He didn't behave entirely well. He let his first wife get hauled off to a Siberian prison camp while he was having an affair with somebody else. And he died the same day as Stalin, and they couldn't even announce that he had died because Stalin had died. So in 1953. So he somehow fell by the wayside as a serious composer, as someone who wasn't as deep as someone like Shostakovich was. And maybe he wasn't. I don't think it was. He was more Apache in some ways. He had his off moments. There's no question about that. But goodness gracious, what a brilliant genius he was, and how much fun that music is. Those are the pieces that really got me into him. It was that, then Romeo and Juliet, and then finally Alexander Nevsky in Claudio Abbato's recording with the LSO. That's how I first encountered Nevsky. Because I was reading the New York Times or something, and they got a review, and I went and bought it. Wow, that thing was insane. One of the great pieces of film music ever, ever, ever. And totally Prokofiev, 100% himself. And I think in the final analysis, when a great composer is always instantly identifiable as himself or herself, as the case may be, then, everything else is just subjective and technical. They've done the first and most important thing they need to do, which is give themselves an identity. And Prokofiev had that identity. How did you first encounter Prokofiev? I'm very interested to know. Was it Peter the Wolf or was it something else? Let me know, please. Let all of us know. Keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.